Hello, hello. Good morning, people.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning. What's up, Gil?
I'm good.
Good morning. Hey, AU. Good morning. Mr. Nick Hanusor. Mr. DK Joel. Hello. Good morning. Nice to meet you. What's up?
I know, it's just here.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Awesome. Okay, you guys can see me, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's just probably give another 5 minutes or so that we can get a good number of people before we set the ball rolling.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone.
Mr. AU, what's up, bro?
I'm all right. I'm good. We can't wait to get this started.
Alrighty. Mr. Olawale Ajao, aka Dr. Ajao, aka Draw. Nice to meet you, bro. Nice having you here. Semitokwe, good morning. Thank you for joining. It's going to be an awesome, awesome time. So just give it another 3 minutes and then we'll set the ball rolling so that we don't waste too much time. In the meantime, I will be pausing. Hey guys, so we're currently about 8 people. Should we make it 10 before we start, or should we just go ahead? Thoughts? Hello, is anybody out there?
Yeah, we're 9 now. Yeah, we good.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think we
10.
can start next 2 minutes.
The next
That's
2
8
minutes.
after.
So that's
Yeah, so
10, 10 minutes after 11.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Right.
All right. Alrighty, it's 10 minutes after 11. I think we should go if everybody's okay. Can we go?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Alrighty. Let me just start my video. Hello, people. How you doing? Wherever you are in the world, whether it's Nigeria, Rwanda, the US, the UK, welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to have you here, and I'm so honored that you chose this time to join me as we explore entrepreneurship essentials. So let's first set the context, right? So if you looked at the flyer, right, I promised a couple of things. I said that we're going to be drilling down into the foundations of what it means to be an entrepreneur, right? I said that we're going to learn a couple of things around business planning. We're going to learn why it's so essential to separate or to distinguish between what an entrepreneur is and who a business person is. And all of those things are very important. But before we drill down into that, perhaps it will be just as well for me to introduce myself properly. All right, and I'm going to share a few slides so that we can interact properly. If you give me a minute. All right, here we go. So by way of introduction, for those of you who don't know me, you're probably wondering, who is this joker? And what gives him the right to come and lecture us on entrepreneurship essentials? How do I even know that he's a go-to person? How do I know he has the requisite knowledge? All right, so I just decided to start with this by way of introduction. My name is William Anwana. It's pronounced Anwana. The first N is silent. And who is William Anwana? So essentially, I've been in banking for about 2 decades. This is actually my 20th year in banking, right? And I've been around the banking game quite a bit. You know, I went through banking operations. I was the guy who would normally receive your checks and stuff, right? From there, I moved to corporate finance, had a stint in corporate finance. You know, I did capital markets. From there, I moved to finance and performance management. You know, so essentially I was drilled in the rudiments of financial analysis, financial reporting, okay? And then I also did some bits of corporate and investment banking, which is where I currently am operating from. As a matter of fact, I'm currently the Chief Finance Officer of the Corporate and Investment Banking Directorate of Sterling Bank. So I guess you could say that I know my way around banking, or I know quite a bit concerning banking and concerning figures especially. What else? I was recently honored as the Enterprise CXO of the Year by AfricaCom. AfricaCom is an annual event hosted by a company called Informa Tech, which is a UK-based company. So they organize events on the continent that are geared towards promoting African technology, right? African enterprise. And in that category, which was essentially for CXOs. CXOs are those in the C-suite. When we talk about C-suites, we're talking about chief executive officers, chief compliance officers, chief finance officers. So people in that C-suite category are referred to as CXOs. Surprisingly, or maybe not, I was the only West African in my category. We're actually about 5 or 6 people. And aside myself, the other nominees were South Africans. You know, I was wondering how I got into this in the first place, but I guess they saw something in me, and they had looked at a couple of things I had done, you know, and the voting was turned out to the public. And at the end of the day, I got the award. So that was like a feather in the cap. Besides that, I'm also the founder and CEO of Hajim Consult. Hajim Consult is a business I started, which essentially provides services around entrepreneurship, right? Leadership and business consulting. More on that later. I'm also an author. My first book, called Entrepreneur First Class, Old Truths and New Insights on Starting Your Business, was released last year on Amazon. So you can find it on Amazon and a few other places. I will also be talking a little bit about that later in the session. But by far, the most important thing to me, and the reason why we're all here really, is because I discovered something about myself. And that something I discovered was that I had a gift. Not just any gift, but a gift for teaching. What I believe is that everybody in the world has a particular gift. And the gift was given to you for a reason. That reason was not for you to enjoy it by yourself, but to serve the gift, right, to other people, to serve it to the community, to serve it to your country, to serve it to your continent, to serve it to the world. When you find that gift is what gives you value, right? And you serve that gift to the people. People are attracted to the gift, and they derive value from what you serve them. So for me, my principal gift is teaching. I love to teach. And whether it's through the spoken word or through the written word, I love to prefer value. I love to teach people about what I've learned, the things that I've gone through, and how I think it would help them. And essentially, I do this around 5 core areas: entrepreneurship, leadership, finance, management, and communication. So essentially, that's a bit about William in a nutshell. I hope I have convinced you a little bit about what my background is, and to show you that I'm a little bit qualified to talk about what we're going to talk about today. All right. Now, in terms of why we're doing this in the first place, first of all, I'm sure we all know that we're living in a crisis situation, right? Everywhere you look, there's something going on. There's a pandemic, there's economic uncertainty, there are job losses, there's unemployment. Things are going on in all parts of the globe. But here's the interesting thing about crisis, right? And I'd like you to look at that statement that's at the top. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste, right? But even before we drill into that, here's something that is very interesting. It's a quotation by Shakespeare. I'm sure we all know who Shakespeare is, the world famous bard of the 15th century, right? Now, there was a play that he wrote called As You Like It. And in that play, he put this quotation into the mouth of one of his characters. And this is the quotation. It goes like this: "Sweet are the uses of adversity, ugly and venomous like a toad, yet wears a precious jewel in its head." Sweet are the uses of adversity, ugly and venomous like a toad, yet wears a precious jewel in his head. What was he saying? He was saying that in times of adversity, right, even though it's a period where everything is going on, you know, so many wrong things are going on around you, there is an opportunity in that crisis for you to use, and which you can use for your own good, Sweet are the uses. When you choose to learn from that situation, right, you get the benefits out of it. Which leads me to another quote by another guy called Charles Dickens, whom you may know. He was the guy who wrote A Tale of Two Cities. And in that book, there is this very popular quotation, right, which is in that book. And it goes like this: it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. What was Dickens talking about? He was also describing a crisis situation, because you see, a crisis is a paradox. It's a paradox. You can look at it in a different way from the way I look at it, right? So if you look at that statement, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Season of hope, season of darkness. Spring of hope, spring of a winter of despair. Season of darkness, season of light. It's a crisis situation. It depends on how you look at it. Two people can look at a particular situation, but they don't see the same thing. Now, is the crisis the worst of times for you, or is it the best of times for you? Now, think back on this thought, right, that I'm going to share. If you look back throughout the history of mankind, if you look at throughout the things, if you look at the things we've gone through in our history, whether it's wars, whether it's famines, whether it's a pandemic, there has always been something driven from that crisis situation that led to something creative happening. So for example, back in the day, wars were fought by, initially we had things like bows and arrows, etc., right? But now, if we're going to fight a war, we're not going to use bows and arrows. What are we going to use? We're going to use things like nuclear warfare, right? Now, how did we progress from using things like bows and arrows all the way to using things like nuclear warfare? It came from a particular mindset. It came from a way of thinking. Someone looked at a particular situation and said, look, rather than using bows and arrows, why don't we, improve? And from that kind of thinking came things like guns, came things like tanks, came things like eventually nuclear warfare. If you look at the health pandemic or the health epidemic that was pervasive in the 18th century, 18th, 19th century, that was the period where a guy called Louis Pasteur discovered that germs which attack human beings are resident in the things that we consume, right? And from that sort of thinking came the process that we know as pasteurization, right? To take a more recent example, the economic crisis of 2008, right? This last crisis, that same year was the year that a company called Uber started, right? So what are we saying? A crisis is an opportunity if you choose to look at it that way, right? It is people who have that mindset that, right, we're in the middle of a terrible situation, but out of this situation, I can create something unique. Those are the people that move the economy, that move the society, and that move the world forward. If you take a look around you at everything that is around you, whether it's your phone, whether it's a desk, whether it's a chair, whether it's the light, whether it's the TV, all of that came from one person's brain, right? It came from innovative thinking. So for instance, back in the day, we're told in the biblical account of creation that God created the trees, for instance. He didn't create chairs. He didn't create tables. All he created were the trees. But he put in the mind of man, the brain of man, about 500 billion cells and said, look, I have given you 500 billion cells. Can you use it, please? And man, when he chose to use the cells in his brain, now came up with these products that we're using today. All of that came from a particular mindset, a particular way of thinking. So it depends on how you look at it. Some people look at crocodiles and see dangerous animals. Some other people look at crocodiles and see footwear. Some people look at sheep and look at them as, oh, lunch. Some other people look at it and say, hey, I can make clothes from it. So what do you see? right? A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. This statement was made by a gentleman called Paul Romer, who incidentally is the senior vice president of the World Bank. And what he was saying is aligned with these thoughts, that depending on where you are, depending on your mindset, how you choose to look at a situation depends or is going to result in the kind of thing that will happen eventually. If you look at the crisis and say it's the worst of times for you, that is what you're going to get. But if you look at the crisis and say, look, in this period, I'm going to use it to develop, I'm going to use it as a catalyst for creativity, you are going to discover that in that crisis situation, it's going to be the best of times for you, right? So a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Now, coming down to our continent, Africa, Africa, the situation looks kind of dire, right? So these statistics show that the continent actually accounts for the poorest countries in the world. The poorest countries in the world, and there are 10 of them. All 10 of them are what you can see here, right? And those values that you're seeing in dollars are actually the GDP of the country based on the PPP. The PPP is the purchasing power, meaning that if you drill it down per individual, what is the ability of the individual in that nation to buy stuff that he needs? And you can see that from the top, which is Sierra Leone, $1.7 thousand thereabouts, all the way down to the last country, which only has GDP and PPP of $727 in a country, right? Now, if you compare that to the more developed countries like the US, the UK, which typically have GDP, PPP in the region of $90,000, you can see that there's a wide disparity. But here's the thing I want you to ponder on. Now, in each of these countries, whether it's Sierra Leone, whether it's South Sudan, whether it's Niger, Malawi, all of them have resources that can make them very rich. So for instance, Sierra Leone, if you know that country very well, you understand that it has a very large repository of diamonds. Some other countries have large deposits of gold. So the question is, why aren't these countries using those resources to enrich themselves? Because those resources have the potential to transform the countries, but what we're seeing is not, it's not reflecting that potential. So what is going on? Now, the other side of that argument is that although we account for the top 10 poorest countries in the world, this is a continent that is bursting with potential. So for instance, pre-COVID, we accounted for 60% of the fastest growing economies in the world. In other words, out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, we accounted for 6 of them. Aside that, the UN has said that by the year 2050, the African continent is going to account for 50% of global growth. To put it in context, the globe or the world is projected to grow by an additional 2.2 billion people. Out of those 2.2 billion people, the continent of Africa is expected to produce half that number. So in other words, 1.1 billion people are expected to be added to the continent by 2050, which is in 30 years' time. Now, of course, if you consider where we are presently in terms of resources and the ability of those resources to meet our present needs, you can see that there's a very wide disparity there and a conflict, because as we are now, the resources that are on ground are not sufficient. So by the time we add another 1.1 billion people, what's going to happen? But the flip side of that argument is that, look, yes, although there will be a drain on the limited resources that we have, if we're able to harness our people's potential and develop within them the right mindset, the right entrepreneurial mindset, we're going to have a set of people that would be able to counter those problems and be able to solve those problems. Now, take a look back at what's happened in 2019, 2020. You would remember that we had a large influx of global investors, people like Jack Ma, people like Jack Dorsey, right, came to this continent and expressed a desire and a hope that they would want to really either live here or invest more in the continent. Why are they doing that? Why are they thinking this way? They are thinking this way because they have realized that this continent has a very massive potential, right? And just looking at the numbers alone, the mere numbers that we have, if you as a businessman are able to entrench yourself within a country that has X population, population is over 1 billion, turning to 2 billion and above. If you're able to corner that market and have most people in that continent use your product or your services, what's going to happen to your accounts? What's going to happen to your net worth? It's going to explode, right? So they know that we have that potential, and they're beginning to sink their tentacles in the continent because they know that we can give them that transformative ability. But we ourselves, the citizens of this continent, are we thinking that way? And really, that is the essence of why we're here, really, because we have to develop that potential. Gone are the days where we choose to just produce things and export them. We need to be able to, or rather import, we need to be able to develop and harness our own internal potential and cater to our own needs. And I think, and I believe that the right way to do that is by developing an entrepreneurial mindset, which is why we're here. But all of that really is the intro, just to set the context. So in terms of foundations, because we talked about foundations, what are the things that we need to know? The first question I normally throw at people, right, who say that they want to start a business or they want to be an entrepreneur, is to ask them, are you sure you're an entrepreneur or are you a business owner? Because there are two different things, and a lot of us tend to confuse those terms. We tend to use them interchangeably. It's the same thing I've found with using two other terms, rich and wealthy. People think they mean the same thing, but they don't, right? Because if you're rich, it just means that you have a significant flow of income that is coming your way. It does not take into account all the liabilities that you have to pay out, all the expenses that you have to meet, right? That's just being rich. You have significant income flows. But being wealthy means that you have a significant net worth, meaning that by the time we remove all your liabilities, which are the things that you need to pay out, from your assets, which are the things that you own, what is left should be significant in order for us to call you wealthy. So it's the same type of thinking around business owner and entrepreneur. They are two different things. So what is a businessman? To give you a broad definition, a businessman or a business owner is somebody who starts a business based on a pre-existing idea, right, or an initiative that is already ongoing. So to give you a typical example, let's say the most popular business in the world right now is to sell phones, right? There's a market for phone selling. People have experienced the fact that if they go into that market and they open up a business that caters to selling of phones, they're probably going to strike it rich, right? So this idea of selling phones is a pre-existing idea. Somebody thought about it, another person entered, some other people saw those people and looked and went like, hey, these guys are making a killing. I'm going to also enter into this business. Why? Because I can see that it's very profitable. So from there, you start a business, you employ people, and you develop and you operate. All you're doing is essentially running a business. That is different from being an entrepreneur. Who is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is somebody who starts a business based on a unique idea, right, that flows internally from what he has discovered about himself and the value that he wants to prefer to the world. So looking at this slide, I've put out about 5 core differences between a business owner and entrepreneur based on 5 core metrics. Those metrics are purpose, risk, the attitude to risk, competition, customer, and success. So let's go through them very quickly. The purpose for a business owner, like I said, is essentially the bottom line. I'm going to the phone business because I can see it's very profitable, and I'm going to start that business because I want to make X amount of income, right? I want to feed myself. I want to feed my family. I want to be self-employed. These are my financial goals. So I'm going to start this business because it's going to enable me to achieve those goals I've set for myself. That's a business owner. Why does an entrepreneur, on the other hand, start a business? He starts a business because he's focused on pursuing a particular goal or a particular vision, and he wants to make a difference in his world or in his community. He's not necessarily focused on profit. He's focused on making a difference. So what does it tell you? It means that a business owner is really a market player. He has come into the market, he has seen the market, and he has decided to play the game. He has decided to join the market. He has decided to join the game and play the game. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, does not play the game. He changes the game. There's a difference. The business owner plays the game. He's a market player. The entrepreneur changes the game. He's a market leader, right? So let's look at the next one, the attitude to risk. For a business owner, because they are looking at their financial goals and they're focused on making a profit, their attitude to risk is going to be very calculated. They're going to be like, all right, so this business has X amount of risk. Now, what should I do to mitigate that risk so that if I'm putting in 10 million naira into the business, I'm going to ensure that I'm not going to lose that money and I'm going to make a profit on top of that. So right from the onset, he's already doing the math. Okay, I'm putting in 10 million naira. Okay, by year one, I should have this amount of profit. If that doesn't happen, then I need to take another route or whatever it is. So he's always focused on risk. Okay, I need to be safe. I need to be safe. I need to be safe. The entrepreneur, on the other hand, takes crazy risks. He doesn't really care about whether he goes down. What he cares about is that, look, this is the vision that's in my head. And no matter how crazy it is, I want to do it. And I'm going to do what it takes to make it. I might fail, but this is the vision and I'm going to pursue it. So if you look at people like Richard Branson, right, or Elon Musk, who had the dream of sending a space shuttle, a privatized space shuttle to space, ordinarily people were like, man, would you shut up? That is not going to happen. Things like that are only under the purview of the government. But this is a guy who had a vision. And no matter how many people who said to him that this is a crazy idea, he still went ahead with it. Are we celebrating him now? Yes. He took the risk and he's being rewarded. Now you discover that the entrepreneurs, the top entrepreneurs, are often rewarded extraordinarily. Why? Because they are focused on bringing the best of themselves, right? They're really passionate about what they're doing, and they decided to put all of their effort, all of their time, all of their being into actualizing that. Now, when you do things like that, when you put yourself, your entire being into what you're doing, you discover that you're often going to get rewarded for that because you're putting you into the business or into the exercise or whatever it is, right? So the next one, competition. This is very interesting. So for a business owner, because he's in a market and he's a market player, he's competing with so many other people in that same market. So what does he want to do? He wants to beat the competition. He wants to be number one, right? He wants to be the number one top seller of phone or whatever it is in that market. So he wants to win the game. He wants to win the game. He wants to win the game. How can we strategize to be number one? How can we beat XYZ people? How can we be number one, right? How can we be the go-tos in the industry or whatever it is? That is his focus. On the other hand, the entrepreneur knows that he only has one person to beat. And that person is his greatest competitor. And that person is himself. He's looking at, no matter how big his success was the last year, all he's looking at this year is, look, okay, I did this, fine. What next? How can I better it? So if you recall, I don't know how many of you read the comments that Elon Musk gave when he was told that at a point he was the richest person in the world. Can you remember what he said? He said, oh, that's nice. Oh, well, back to work. Back to work. Right? So some other people would have gone, number one richest guy in the world, yay, we're done. But this guy said, okay, that's nice, back to work. He's not interested in being number one, right? His focus is on, right, this is what I want to do. Okay, I'm done with that. What next? So the entrepreneur strives to beat himself Another example is that, if you recall, after he came out with Apple computers, it was a massive success. He was always going back to look, what can we do better? What can we do better? What can we do better? And he would push his people and push and push and push. And then we got things like the iPad and the iPod, etc. Because he was constantly striving to bring out more and more things. He was striving to beat himself. Right? He wasn't really interested in what Microsoft was doing or what the other people were doing. He was interested in how can I push myself to deliver more, which leads me to customers, right? Which is also another interesting metric, right? So for the business owner knows that customers are the source of his revenue. Without customers, obviously you won't make sales. There will be no revenue because you're in the business of buying and selling, right? You're selling a product or you're selling a service. Without customers coming to purchase those products and services, there will be no revenue. So for the business owner, the customers are the lifeblood of his business. Without the customer, his business fails. But here's the thing about the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur doesn't look at the customer, although he needs the customer. He doesn't look at the customer as the lifeblood of his business. He says that, look, the customer is my duty. He is the source of my duty. Why I'm here, why I'm in business, is because I want to serve the customer. The customer is my concern. In other words, the customer is his own lifeblood. The customer is his own lifeblood, whereas for the business owner, it is the business's lifeblood. In other words, without the customer, the entrepreneur does not exist. For the business owner, without the customer, his business does not exist. Two different mindsets. And then, of course, what does it mean to achieve success for these people? For the business owner, because he has started a business, his definition of success is that, did we make profits at the end of the day? Did we reward our shareholders, the people who put money in the business? Were they rewarded? Those are his normal metrics of success. But what does the entrepreneur think about success? He's saying, this vision I had in my head, did I achieve it? The purpose for which I started this business, did I attain it? That for me is success. Those are the two different mindsets or some of the things that contribute to the different mindsets of the business owner and the entrepreneur. But what we've really done is to look at them in terms of descriptive distinctions. We've been trying to distinguish what a business owner is and who an entrepreneur is. But what really does entrepreneurship mean? We have to get to the root of entrepreneurship in order to understand it properly. Now, here's the thing. If you look at the etymology of the word, right? The word entrepreneur actually comes from French, right? It comes from a particular word called entreprendre. I hope I pronounced that properly for all you French-speaking people out there. Entreprendre, right? Which means to undertake, meaning when you take up something, when you start up something, you undertake something, right? It means to undertake. And it also refers to enterprise. So for instance, when we say that somebody is enterprising, we mean what? That the person is really an innovative person, right? He's discovering things, he's trying to get things happen and all that. So the combination of those two words led to that French word called entreprendre, right? But the root of that word is actually Latin. And what is the Latin root? Two words. Inter prehenda. I don't know Latin that well, so I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. I think I am though. Inter prehenda. That's the Latin root word. What does it mean? It means about 4 different things in various contexts. To seize, to control, to grasp, to master. To seize, to control, to grasp, to master. Very interesting. The question, of course, is to seize, to control, to master, to grasp what? To master what? To answer that question, what I discovered is that there's a particular source that gives us the answer. And I think for me, and my belief really, is that you find that source on the right side of the screen, right? Now, in the book of Genesis, right? Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, God said something. This is what he said. If you remember your Bible very well, or you can check it out. He said, let us make man in our own image and in our likeness, and let him have dominion. Remember, each word in that verse is very important. Let him have dominion over the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, and every creeping thing that crawls upon the ground. Let us make man in our own image and in our likeness, and let him have dominion over the birds of the air, fish of the sea, everything that creeps upon the ground. Very interesting. Now, the word dominion, if you look at it in the original context, which is Hebrew, actually means to rule, to control, to dominate, to master. Are you seeing the correlation? To rule, to manage, to seize, to control, to master. The same definition that Interprehender gives under the Latin meaning. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So let's take it a bit further, right? Assuming that we're on the right course, which I believe that we are. Now, what did God say initially? He said, let us make man in our own image and in our own likeness. Let's pause there for a minute. And let's consider the principle of manufacturing, right? Now, if you go to, say, a car manufacturing plant where they make cars, and if you study the process, if you analyze it, right, and you study that process, you discover something very interesting. When they are making the car and when they are assembling the car, it goes through various processes. They start from the engine, they put all the things together, they do the body work, etc., etc., and then they would test the car to make sure that it is working and functioning properly. The last thing that they put on the car is the image. Go to any car manufacturing plant, whether it's Toyota, whether it's Mercedes, whatever it is. The last thing that they put on the car is the company's image. If you look at the back of the car, you see, the logos, right? Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, whatever it is. The last thing, that logo goes on last. They only put the logo, they only put the image of the company when the product is finished. Let's look at another example, right? This is an iPhone, and at the back of this iPhone is the logo of Apple, right? This image, this logo only came on to the product after they had made the product and finished it. You only put the image of something when it is finished. Let me describe finished for you. This phone, right? Using this phone, you bought the phone, and in that box, right, you would see the manual, and they made you various promises. This phone can make calls. How do they know that? Because they already tested it. This phone can connect to the internet. How do they know that? Because they already tested it. This phone can send text messages, you can store stuff, you can connect to the cloud, etc., etc. How do they know all that? Because they already tested it. They put the image of their company as a guarantee that, look, this product you're going to have is a tested product, because you only put the image of something when it is finished. Image means being. Image means being. In other words, it's not just something that you put there. It is the essence of a thing. In other words, the name of a thing is the thing. That is why if you buy a product that is under warranty, another guarantee, they make you a promise, right? If there's a malfunction with this product, send it back to us. We will replace it or repair it and send it back to you at no expense. some time ago, I was reading about, I think it was some Toyota cars that had some malfunctions, and they had to send the word out that, look, all those cars for that model that were purchased for that year, please send it back to us. We're going to fix whatever is wrong and send it back to you at no cost to you. Now, that process would have cost them millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, but they didn't care. Why? Do they know you? They don't know you. Why are they doing that? They are doing it not for you, they are doing it for themselves. They are trying to maintain their reputation, their name. Why? Because when you look at the back of that product, their image is on it, which is essentially what happened when we look at the book of Genesis. When he said, let us put our image on it, it didn't mean that he was just starting. It meant that he has put some things inside you and he has already tested you. And so he's confident to say that, look, my image is on you, do what I've asked you to do. What was the next thing he said? He said, in our image and in our likeness. In our likeness means to function like. To function like. So you have the image, which means characteristics or being, and then you have likeness, which means to function like. Why did he say those two things? Because we know that God does not fail. So when he says, I've created you in my image and in my likeness, it means that you also cannot fail. But a lot of us find ourselves in situations of failure, right? But why is that? I've discovered that the reason why a lot of us fail or do not achieve a lot of things that we want to achieve, whether it's money, whether it's good relationships, whether it's success, whatever success means to you, is that we are not operating the way we are meant to. If all you knew about this phone was that you could make calls, you could send text messages, or you could connect to the internet, you only knew 3 things out of maybe 100 different things that this phone could do, you are not operating at the full potential of the phone. You're only doing 3%. You're only using 3% of the phone's full potential. You're not operating at the maximum capacity because you don't understand how the phone really functions, which is another thing that is really important. We don't have a clear understanding of something, right? So here's the thing. When he said to seize, to control, to grasp, to master, he was saying that I have given you authority to be in control of resources on the earth. Because everything that he said was about the earth, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, creeping things on the ground, the trees, the animals, the plants, whatever it was, are all resources. It means, therefore, that whatever you were supposed to do involves you mastering something or mastering a resource. You can only master something that you have an ability to do. That ability comes from something that I call a gift, or what is called a gift. What is a gift? I'm going to use this analogy, which I think you can relate to. Now, let's assume that this was a mango seed. It's a little big, but for the sake of assumption. Assume this is a mango seed I'm holding in my hand. The fact is that I'm holding a mango seed, right? Yeah. But that is not the truth. The truth is that I'm actually holding a mango forest. Why do I say so? Because if I plant this seed in the ground, it's going to what? It's going to germinate. If I plant it in the right ground, not just any other ground or any old ground, it's going to germinate and it's going to bring forth what? Fruit. In those fruits are what? More mango seeds. Those mango seeds, if they are planted, germinate more what? More trees, which have more fruits, which have more seeds, which have more trees, which have more fruits, which have more seeds. In other words, from one mango seed, I have a plethora of mango trees and mango fruits, and it goes on and on and on. Your seed is something that you're given within you that if you use it properly, if you understand it properly, and if you deploy it properly, it's going to germinate into 1,000 and a million fold. So There are about 7 words that I wrote there, which I want you to really take to heart. Those words are what you can see there: seed, gifts, deployment, resources, solve problems, mindset, value. What does all that mean? I'm going to relate it for you. I've talked about seed, and I said that the seed is the gift, right? Which is the next thing. The gift that you were given. Everybody has a gift. Everybody has a gift. Everybody has a gift. There are about almost 8 billion people on earth, right? But all of us have a unique gift. Why do I say so? Look at the palms of your children. If you have twins, look at their palms. Are they the same? No. Each individual has a unique set of fingerprints, right? I was actually referring to fingerprints, not palms. A unique set of fingerprints that is different from the other, whether they're identical twins or not. There's not one person on this earth that has your fingerprints. Not one person on this earth has your own unique personality, your own unique abilities, or your own combination of talents. Not one person. You are made in a particular way that when you put it all together and you maximize it, brings forth a particular fruit from the seed. But how do you do that? You do it by deploying the gifts. Deployment is the opposite of employment. Now, what entrepreneurship really is number one, a discovery of a gift, a discovery of a seed. If you look at the top entrepreneurs in the world, they have discovered something about themselves. I was looking at Forbes magazine recently, right? I think for 2020, that shows the top billionaires in the world sorted by net worth, right? So at the top, obviously, you had guys like Elon Musk, etc., Jeff Bezos, those guys. Now, if you look at the businesses that they operate or that they run, you discover that they are very diverse, right? They are very diverse. So you have things like media, you have things like telecommunications, you have things like fashion or retail, you have e-commerce. But for all of these, or from all of these different gifts, right, came value. So you have people with net worth of $100 billion, $125 billion, $130 billion, from running a business focused on a particular thing, whether it was media or whatever it was. Interestingly, I also saw one guy, I think it was number 100 or so on the list. I can't remember the number, but it was there. Guess what his business was? Pig breeding. The guy was breeding pigs. That was there was no other business there. He's a pig breeder. I can't remember his name now, right? But I think he's Chinese or so. Pig breeding, and his net worth was in excess of $100 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Pig breeding. What does that tell you? It is not the business that is important. It is the person. The person has the seed, the idea. He discovers it, and looks at it and says, this idea, I can use it to solve a problem. I can use it to change my community. I can use it to proffer value to people. I can use it to serve. Let me go ahead and do that. And he does that, and he solves problems for people. The more problems he solves, what happens? The wealthier he gets. So when you talk about startups, because here's another thing that people tend to mix up. They tend to mix up small business and startups. Again, those are two different things. If we go back to our initial definition of or distinction between businessman and entrepreneur, a small business is essentially what a businessman starts, right? If we go back to the phone thing, if I get 10 phones and I say I want to sell them and I want to develop a business around it, I've developed a small business which is centered on selling phones to give me a profit. That's a small business. An entrepreneur starts a startup, if you permit me to use that phrase, right? He introduces a startup because that startup is based on a unique idea, an innovative idea. That innovative idea is something that you can use to scale. Because why? Because it is centered around a problem that you have identified, which you feel that you are in a unique position to solve. And I said what? I said the more problems you solve for people, the wealthier you get. People are attracted to problem solvers. They are attracted to problem solvers. So the more problems you're able to solve at scale, the wealthier you get and the wealthier your business gets. So if you look at Amazon, right, Jeff Bezos, he identified a need, a problem that was prevalent in the world. And he said that, look, rather than people having to go all the way into retail, having to go out there to buy stuff, why don't I set up something, right, that with a click of a button, they can have those products and services delivered to their doorstep. He solved a problem. And because that problem is pervasive, right, almost everybody in the world needs that problem to be solved, right? The more he was able to grow that business, the more value, right, he offered, the more value he got, because that's the thing about it. When you start up a business based on the right purpose, which is to solve problems, people will make you valuable. So let me paint this picture for you, right? Everybody here has a family, right? If you're just married, right, or you have kids, you have family, you have friends. Now, when you say that you love those people, whether you love your spouse, you love your kids, you love your pet dog, or whatever it is, right? How do you show that you love them? You do that by what? By spending time with them, by sharing your gifts with them, by sharing your money with them, right? You're involved in their lives and you're focused about how do I make these people happy? What happens when you do that? Those people do what? Most times they love you back. The love that they give in response to the love that you gave them is a reward. That is exactly what happens for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs realize that they have a problem that they can solve for people, and they prioritize those people. That is why the customer is their lifeblood. They prioritize solving problems for those people. And when people know and they trust that, look, this guy isn't playing, he's actually in this to solve my problem, what's going to happen? The guy is going to what? He's going to bring his money to you. Take the money, right? You're solving a problem for me. This is your reward for solving that problem. The more problems you solve for people, the more value you get. When you make people valuable, they make you valuable. That is what it really means to be an entrepreneur. Find your gift. Discover what makes you unique. Discover what problem that gift is supposed to solve. Solve the problem with the right mindset. So let me talk about mindset because it's also very important. What is mindset? I'll use this analogy. The lion, we all know the lion, right? The lion is called what? The king of the jungle. Why is he called the king of the jungle? Is he the tallest animal in the jungle? No. Is he the strongest? No. Is he the wisest? No. Is he the most beautiful? No. Why then is he called the king of the jungle? I'm going to tell you why. Because the lion has a particular mindset. If the lion sees an elephant, which is about what, 5, 10, 20 times bigger than he is, what most animals will do is to what? Is to run away from an animal that is bigger than them because they see it as a threat. The lion does the opposite. He looks at the elephant and only one word springs to his mind. That word is lunch. That word is lunch. The lion doesn't care that the elephant is twice his size or 5 times his size. He looks at it and says, lunch. And he goes after the elephant. The elephant is like, this guy is crazy, and takes off. But meanwhile, the elephant could crush the lion if he wanted to. But because the lion has that mindset that, look, I don't care how big you are, I'm going to run after you and I'm going to devour you and eat you for lunch. That is the mindset that you need to have. Because it's not just enough to find a problem and deploy yourself. There are going to be issues. But with the right mindset, right, you're able to have the right attitude that would make you a market leader. And then when you're able to do all that and you provide value, that is when you have mastery. That is what it means to be an entrepreneur. To seize, to control, to grasp, to master a resource, to master a gift, to deploy a gift. That is what it means to be an entrepreneur, right? That is what it means to be an entrepreneur. So how do you do that? How do you master your gift? How do you discover your gift? How do you discover what it is that you're supposed to bring to the table? Now, there are 5 questions that you need to ask yourself and that you need to answer. Those questions are what I call the questions of life. Now, everybody in the world, whether they realize it or not, is actually trying to answer those 5 questions, whether they realize it or not. When you answer those 5 questions, then you're on the way to being who you are truly supposed to be. What are those 5 questions? Who am I? Right? Who am I? Where am I from? Why am I here? What can I do? And where am I going? Who am I is a question of identity. Because most people actually don't know who they are. If you ask someone that question, who are you? The answer they're going to give you is going to be related to what they do. So if I ask somebody, who are you? They're going to say, well, I'm a doctor, or I'm a banker. I didn't ask what you did. I asked who you were. They're 2 different things. In order for you to answer who you are, you must know something about yourself, which is related to the next question. Where am I from? If you ask most people that question again, they're going to give you a typical response based on what their geographical or their family lineage. Well, I'm from Africa. I'm from Nigeria. I'm from Zimbabwe. No, we're not talking about your ethnic heritage. We're talking about the source of your being as a human being. The source of your being as a person. When you answer that question, you will know who you are. I'm going to try and help you answer that question. Let's just go through the rest. The next one is what? Why am I here? That is the most important question that people tend to grapple with. Why am I here? It's a question of purpose. What in the world am I doing on this earth? Why? I mean, am I just here to eat and to suck up oxygen and to relate with people and then die? What is my purpose for being here? Why am I here? The next question is, what can I do? What is my potential? And the last question is, where am I going? That is the question of destiny. So who am I? Who am I? For you to answer that question properly, you must know your gift. Because your gift is who you are. Your gift, remember how I described gift, it's something that is unique to you, something no one else has, something no one else can do. No one can do you like you. You're a one of a kind. Nobody else before you has come that is exactly like you. And after you go, there's not going to be another person that's going to be exactly like you. You are a one of a kind person, and you have a unique set of attributes and a gift. When you find that, you discover who you are, because your gift is who you are. So let me give you an example. Michael Jackson, all of you remember Mike, right? There was this interview that he gave, I think when he was in his teens, when he started with the Jackson 5, right? If you remember, Michael was the lead singer of the Jackson 5. And there was this interview, and the person asked him, hey, Mike, you're really good at singing and dancing, do you really love music? What was Michael's response? He says, I am music. I don't love music. I don't just do music. I am music. How do you get to think like that? You get to think like that because you've discovered something about you, a gift that nobody else can do quite like you. Michael knew at the tender age of 12 or 11 or whatever it was, that he had a gift that only he could express in his own unique way. And that is why he was confident at 12 years old to say that I'm not just a musician or a singer, I am music. And if you read a lot of if you read a lot of his interviews, you discover that he always attributed his gifts to a higher power, right? Whether that higher power was necessarily from the source that we want it to be is a different question altogether. But he always attributed his gift to a higher power because he knew that it came from a particular source. And if you're able to discover who you are, then you will know why you are here. Because your gift is not meant for you to consume. Think of it this way. An apple tree or mango tree, right, is planted in the ground, it germinates, it brings forth leaves and branches, and eventually brings forth fruit. Thousands and hundreds and thousands of fruit. Question, does the mango tree or the apple tree eat its fruit? No, it only produces its fruit. So who eats the fruit? People. People see the tree, they see the fruit. The fruit attracts the people to the tree. The people go to the tree and they have discovered something of value that they can benefit from. They what? They take the fruit and they consume it and they feel good. That is what it means. When you discover your value, your gift, who you are, you serve it. The people, your purpose is to serve the gift. People are attracted to the gift that you serve and they come for it. When they come for that gift and they see that you're giving them value, they are under obligation to take care of you. So if a mango tree or an apple tree is giving you hundreds and thousands of fruit, what are you going to do? You're going to make sure that that tree is what? Is perennially active. You're going to give it nutrients, you're going to give it fertilizer, you're going to make sure it's watered all the time because it is giving you fruit that you need. The purpose of your gift is to serve it. What is potential then? Potential, I heard this really interesting definition of potential, right? Which I want to share. And it's like, it goes like this. Potential is everything that you can do that you haven't done yet. So I gave an example some time ago about this phone. And I said that if all you knew about the phone was 3 functions, make calls, send text messages, connect to the internet, and you're done. Meanwhile, it has about 100 different functions. You're only using 3%. You have not explored what? Its full potential. You're way below what this phone can do. That is how most of us live. We don't know what we're truly capable of. We don't know our full potential. Potential is everything you can do that you haven't done yet. So you have to dig deep. So I'll give you a small example about myself, right? So a year or 2 ago, I don't think I would have imagined myself doing what I'm doing now. But did I have this potential? Yes, I did. Why wasn't I doing it? Because I wasn't aware that I really had a gift for teaching or for sharing with people about the things that I've learned. I was just doing a job, getting the job done, getting paid, and that was it. It wasn't until I discovered that, look, you have this gift. And if you serve this gift, you're going to proffer some value to people. That is when I discovered that I had the potential to speak. So most people who normally live with me think I'm very quiet and think I'm shy and whatever. And that might tend to be the case ordinarily, right? Because I'm really a reserved person, or I tend to be reserved. But when I get in my element, right, like the way I'm talking right now, this is my element. This is, you can see I'm talking with a lot of passion. This is what I love to do because I've discovered my gift and I'm serving the gift. And I'm discovering that the more I speak, the more potential I'm using up because I'm discovering more and more what I can do. When you discover all those 4 things, you will know where you are going because you have seen the end game. You have seen the vision. You've been to the mountaintop and you have seen where you need to go. You must answer the questions of life if you're going to be a real entrepreneur. All right? Now, funny slide, huh? But really it speaks to another core thing that we need to imbibe, which is again related to what I just talked about. But I wanted to put this here for emphasis. Now, most of us, if not all of us, will know these 2 guys on the screen, right? So on the right, you have Bruce. And on the left, you have that other gentleman called Jackie. So who was Bruce? Bruce was, for those of you who grew up in the 70s and the 80s, even though he died before the 80s, right? Bruce was the man. You couldn't mention a martial arts flick without mentioning Bruce Lee, right? Even as kids, I remember that my friends and I, if we wanted to practice martial arts, our clarion call was, "Hey man, let's go and fight Bruce Lee." We didn't say let's go and fight, practice kung fu. Let's go and practice karate. Let's go and practice taekwondo. No, we said let's go and fight Bruce Lee, because to us, Bruce was synonymous with martial arts. Every single person that we saw that was kicking and punching people was Bruce for us, because he was the man that epitomized martial arts in our heads. And I think that's the case for lots of people. So Bruce was the man, right? You couldn't touch him. You know, when Bruce stepped on that screen and it was like, what? You just knew that the bad guy was in trouble, right? Because that was who he was. He had discovered something about himself and he projected that image on the screen. So he had this intensity about him, right? That enabled people to see him as a hero. But what happened to Bruce? Bruce died at the young age of 33 in 1973. And what happened? There was a shockwave throughout the martial arts industry and in the world of movies, because they were like, Bruce is gone. What's going to happen? We need to find a replacement. We need to find the next Bruce Lee. So that's what happened. People were looking for the next Bruce Lee. So they look at this guy who has similar features and who could maybe relatively copy Bruce's mannerisms. And they're like, you, come, you're the next Bruce Lee. So if you remember that period, you remember people like Bruce Lee and Dragon Lee, something Lee, the other one Lee, you know, and then you have funny movies like Bruce against James Bond and Bruce against the devil or whatever it was. They're like hundreds and hundreds of Bruce quotation movies, because all of them had lost an icon. And they thought that the best way they could keep that thing going was by finding the next Bruce Lee. Now, the gentleman on the left of the screen, whose name, of course, is Jackie Chan, also actually started out by being the next Bruce Lee, or the Bruce wannabe. It was actually a stuntman. If you look at, for those of you who are martial arts fans, if you remember the movies like Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon, Jackie was actually a stuntman in both of those movies. So he actually, you know, played some parts with Bruce and all that. Bruce was his hero, his icon. He wanted to be like Bruce. And then when they were promoting his movies, right, they'll put at the top in very large letters, the next Bruce Lee, and at the bottom, in very small letters, Jackie Chan. So nobody knew who he was really, because all they could see was the next Bruce Lee. But he, again, wasn't doing that well, because what he was doing was to try and copy Bruce. But after a while, what happened to this guy? He said, look, man, this is not working. I cannot be like this guy. And he hit upon a realization that, look, I cannot be like Bruce. Why? For the simple reason that there had already been a Bruce. I can only be like one person. I can only be like Jackie. Flowing from that realization, what did he do? He started to make movies that catered to his own unique personality. So if you look at Jackie Chan movies, you discover something very interesting about them. He likes to do crazy stunts. He likes humor. He likes a massive fight scene. 100 people here, 100 people there. All of them are fighting, you know, bustles in the air, blah, blah, blah. That's Jackie for you. Very different from the Bruce era of movies, where it was usually 1-on-1 or 1 against 5, and then Bruce would be very intense and all that. Jackie is completely different, but he had found his niche. He had found what made him unique. And today, Jackie is a legend in his own right, with over 100 movies to his name. Why? Because he had found what made him valuable. So we need you. We don't need you to be another Bill Gates, another Steve Jobs, another Dangote, another Mike Adenuga, another Jack Ma, another Jack Dorsey. We need you, whoever you are. We need you to discover what makes you valuable, what makes you unique. We need you to discover that thing about you that makes you different from the next person. That is what we need. And that's what you need too, right? But all of this is just one side of it. We talked about foundations, right? But there's a business element to it. There's a business element to it, right? So what I'm saying in effect is that, yes, you need to find your gifts, You need to find what makes you valuable. You need to deploy your gifts and all that. But there is a business side. So why do most startups fail? Why do most entrepreneurs fail? Because they have the idea, but they haven't mastered the business element of it. So this slide really speaks to that. So most of us have this idea that we think is going to make us, the globe's hottest human being or whatever it is. And they're like, money cometh. Money ain't cometh. It doesn't work that way, right? Yes, you need to have the vision. Yes, you need to have the idea. Yes, you're going to need courage. But those things do not necessarily make you successful in business. And that is why, if you look at the statistics, which we're going to look at very soon, most businesses tend to fail in their first year of operating. It's not because they didn't have a vision. It's not because they didn't have an idea or courage. They had these three things, but they still failed. So the first thing I need you to realize, after having settled the question, I hope, of the need to discover what makes you unique, what I need you to realize is that those things will not necessarily make you successful in business. Why is that? Let's look at the statistics. 90% of new businesses, startups, whatever it is, tend to fail in their very first year. Isn't that scary? Their very first year. So it means that if there were 10 of us in the room, right, and all 10 of us started a business or we started up something, by the end of the year, only one of us would have made it. Another stat, only 50% actually make it to their fifth year. 50%. Only 40% actually declare a profit. And less than 70% make it to the 10-year mark. Very, very scary. Again, I ask you, didn't these people have an idea? Didn't they have a vision? Didn't they have courage? Yes, they did. But they still failed. Why? Why is the question. Let's look at why. Now, I've done a little bit of research, and in my experience, as a CFO, finance consultant, etc., I've discovered that typically, when these things that are here are not fully understood or embedded in the business, you get to have failure. So let's look at them individually. First of all, there's insufficient funding, right? Or weak cash flow. There's business plans which are weak or unrealistic. There's market research that is shallow, and then there's rigidity. So let's look at them individually, right? So funding, what makes the business move? It actually boils down to cash flow. We're going to have a little discussion on cash flow further down the line, but to give you a short and sweet definition, cash flow is really the amount of cash that flows in and out of the business and what you need in order to make your business move forward. You need cash flow. So when cash flow is not sufficient, what happens? Your business tends to fail because you need money to pay your staff, you need money to settle your creditors, you need money to run your business, to buy stuff that the business needs to operate. If you don't have enough cash running through the business, you will have cash flow problems. Why do businesses have cash flow problems? Because they do not understand how cash flow works, and they are not sufficiently funded, and so they fail. As a matter of fact, over 80% of startup failure, or indeed of business failure, is attributable to cash flow issues. Over 80%. The next one, business plans. We all know, hopefully, that business plans are important, right? But if your plans are unrealistic, trust me, you're going to have a very hard time keeping things together. So to give an example, you start up a business and your business plan, my company does this, my company does that, my company does this, and then by the end of year one, I'm going to make $200 million in profit. Really? How are you going to achieve that? Is it doable? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, depending on your gift and depending on the problems that you solve. But how really are you going to achieve that? And you ask them that question, they're like, well, we're just going to put our products out there, and people are going to believe in the product and they're going to buy it, and then really, I can assure you that money ain't coming. Your business plans, I'm going to look at business plans sometime later, need to be realistic. So if you don't have a firm idea of what's happening in your market or with your competitors, or have a firm idea of marketing strategy, all of these things are essential that need to go into your business plan. If these things are missing or are not realistic, you are going to fail. This one is not a matter of vision or matter of the greatest idea since the dawn of humankind. You are going to fail. Another thing is, which again is tied to unrealistic business plans, is market research. You're starting up something fresh and you just jump into it without taking time to consider what is going on in the macro environment. What is going on in the markets that you want to dominate? If it's the phone market, how many people are doing what you do? Right? How many customers do you want to serve? And who are your competitors, no matter how many they are? Who are they serving? Are you sure that when you jump into the market, people are going to automatically follow you? What is the thing that you're going to produce that will make them follow you? You need to do your research, and it needs to be very deep. And then finally, there's rigidity, right? Rigidity is a problem because you might have a good business plan, but you're not really looking at the vagaries and the variables that are continuously happening. So a very beautiful example is of course, COVID. Pre-COVID, what did companies tend to do? They tended to operate in their, their silos or their business environments. Employees come to work, they focus on the work, they get their work done, they go home. If that business was not considering things that could happen where there's a change and then people will need to start working from home, what will happen to that business? They're going to go down very quickly, right? Even for me as a person, I tended to be the kind who just goes to the office and make sure that the work was done. And if the work wasn't done in the office, then I probably wouldn't go home because I thought that you could only do work in the office. But here comes COVID, and COVID says, look, William, if you don't find a way to work remotely, you're not going to have a job. So I had to wean myself away from that thinking, that I can only get the job done in the office and then have to get up remote equipment and all that would enable me to work remotely. So you cannot afford to be rigid because it's a fluid environment. Things happen all the time. You need to be adaptable, right? So insufficient funding, unrealistic business plans, shallow market research, rigidity are the top reasons that business fail, okay? But what is the root cause of failure? We've talked about things, we talked about what we described really are more of symptoms. There's a root cause. It's just like having maybe a cancer or something. You see symptoms, maybe high fever, you're having a breakout or whatever, your body's aching you. Those are all symptoms, but those are not the problem. The problem is that there is maybe a cancerous growth somewhere in your body, God forbid. So the root cause of business failure actually boils down to one thing, and that thing is knowledge. Knowledge is the starting point of anything you're going to do. You need to have knowledge of purpose. We talked about purpose. You need to have knowledge of financial literacy, of finance. You need to know the numbers. You need to know how to innovate. You need to know how to structure your business. You need to know how to brand. You need to know how to manage. All of that requires knowledge. Why is knowledge so important? So we talk about things like knowledge is power, right? But that's not really the case. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. You can only get to the position of power when you apply something that you know. But here's another thing. How do you apply something that you don't understand? So there are actually three separate structures or three separate paths that converge into power or what we call wisdom. There's knowledge, right, which is having a knowledge of something, right? Just the way I have knowledge that, okay, for me to operate this computer, I can do Control-Alt-Delete or whatever it is. That's a knowledge. But I cannot apply that wisdom or that knowledge rather, if something goes wrong with the computer and I try Control-Alt-Delete and nothing happens. I only have the knowledge of Control-Alt-Delete, but I don't understand how to fix the computer because I don't understand how it works. So knowledge is one thing, and wisdom is the extreme end of the spectrum, and it's the most essential thing. But the most important thing is understanding. Without understanding, you cannot apply what you know. Without applying what you know, you cannot get to the position of power or of wisdom, right? So knowledge of these things I've mentioned here, there are actually more of them. Knowledge of the principles of business are actually what lead to the ultimate failure in business. What are principles? Principles are universal laws that work anywhere. In a crisis, under a crisis, within a crisis, a principle will work. It's a universal law. To give you an example, let's look at a common law, the law of gravity, right? Which says that whatever goes up must what? Must come down, okay? So if I go to the top of a 20-story building and I think to myself, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, I'm the king of the universe, I'm the king of the world, and I jump from there, I'm going to discover in less than a minute that I'm actually not the king of the world. I'm actually a dead human being. Why? Because I have defied a universal law. And that would happen to me no matter where I am in this world, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's Rwanda, whether it's the US, whether it's the UK, wherever it is. If I go to the top of a 20-story building and I jump down, wherever it is in the world, I will die because I have violated a universal law. If I put my hand in fire, my hand is going to burn. If a Chinese man puts his hand in fire, his hand is going to burn. If a person in the UK or in Scotland or wherever it is puts his hand in fire, his hand is going to burn. What has happened? All of us have violated a law. If you're operating a car, you're using your car operates with the law, right? Your car operates with the law of using fuel, or for those of us who are still using fuel-based cars. But if you decide in your thinking that, look, your car deserves only the best, so I'm going to go into that supermarket, I'm going to get top grade orange juice, which is worth $20,000. I'm going to pour it into my fuel tank, right? Do I need to prophesy to you that your car is not going to work? No, I don't need to prophesy, because your car will not work because you have violated the law on which the car runs on. It's the same thing with business. Business and anything in life operates on a set of principles. If you don't know what those principles are, and if you don't apply them, you are going to fail, guaranteed. So success and failure are actually two sides of the same coin. What differentiates them is your knowledge of principles. You need knowledge, okay? So let's quickly talk about finance, because finance is what I've noticed a lot of people, especially business owners and entrepreneurs, tend to miss it. So for you as an entrepreneur, you need to understand how the numbers work, right? Because the numbers are telling you a story about the business. You can look at a set of figures and at a glance know how well you're doing. But if you don't understand how those numbers work together, you're not going to be able to know what is going on. So it's very critical for you to have a working knowledge of finance. You don't need to be an accountant. You don't need to go for an MBA in Harvard. You just need to understand how these work. And really it boils down to mindset more than anything else. And I'll give you a short example to buttress that point. So I've said that I'm the CFO, right, of corporate investment banking. I've done finance, I've done corporate banking, I've done performance management and all that. But here's the funny thing, right? Before I entered into finance about 13, 14 years ago, I was actually in banking operations, and the limit of my experience using computers was, you receive checks or whatever it was, you enter it in the computer, and then you sort of reconcile the pages. And my knowledge of Excel was actually limited, but I didn't know that because for me, I thought the limit of Excel, remember potential, right? The limit of Excel was, you enter in figures, 1, 2, 3, you do auto sum, and then gives you the total number. And I'm like, yay, Excel, I'm a guru, wonderful, right? So I get transferred to this department called performance management, which is finance based. And the guy who runs the business or who runs the department, looks at me up and down. Okay, yeah, this raspy voice. Okay, yes, you deployed to me, good. So what is your knowledge of Excel? And I thought I was the man, right? So I was like, and I was trying to be modest. So I was like, oh, Excel, I'm pretty good, about 60, 70%. She was like, oh, really? Oh, that's nice. So we did a lot of Excel work here. So you must know how to use VLOOKUP, right? VLOOK. I'm sorry, I don't know that one, sir. I was like, what? You don't know VLOOKUP? Okay, you must know how to use MID, right? You know MID. I was like, MID. I'm not really conversant with MID. He said, you don't know MID. Okay, you must know concatenate. What? Okay. No, this is no, I'm out, I'm gone. Please look for somebody else. But it was like, no, there's nobody else. It's you. And like, okay, I'm dead, I'm gone, come and bury me. So I was stuck, right? And I think for the next 3 days, I had brain fever. I actually had nightmares. I'd be sleeping in my bed and I'll be thinking about VLOOKUP, concatenate, MID. And I wake up in a cold sweat. But what happened, and this is what I want you to get, what happened was I made a decision in my head one day after the nightmares that, look, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to learn it, right? And I'm going to put in my best and see what happens, which is exactly what I did. Now, there's this quote that a lot of you may know, which is ascribed to Henry Ford. And he said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, either way, you are correct. And that's really spot on, because what it was saying is that it is your mindset, the way you think about something, that is actually your reality. So if you think you can do something, you will do it. And if you think you can't, you will not do it. But that truth actually came from somewhere else. Because if you read in the book of Proverbs, the wise King Solomon, who was the wisest man on the earth, said what? As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. A lot of people tend to misquote that verse because they say, as a man thinks, so is he. But there's an essential phrase, in his heart. The word heart there does not refer to the physical pump in your chest that pumps blood and all that. Remember that passage was written in Hebrew, and Hebrew does not translate to English on the face of it very well. There's actually a deeper context. So if you look at the deeper context in Hebrew, it actually means to the consciousness of your being, which is actually your mind, your inner mind. The place where you have conversations with yourself, when you sit with yourself and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I've made up my mind to do this. That is your subconscious mind. That is where you take decisions. That is your heart. So the way you think in that place is what translates to reality, which is what Henry Ford was essentially saying. So that is what happened to me. I thought about this, and I thought that in my heart, not here, that I can do this. And what happened with that mindset, with that renewed mindset, I went back to work and I put myself in it. And what happened 10 years later? I became the CFO using the same Excel that I knew absolutely nothing about, whether it was VLOOKUP or concatenate or whatever. 10 years later, I was the CFO advising businesses using the same. So it's all about mindset. You don't have to be scared about numbers, because I hear a lot of things about that. People are like, man, numbers are Greek, numbers are, they're like ancient Roman numerology. I don't understand what it means. Please get me an accountant. But here's the thing. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, when you're looking to scale your business and you have external investors coming in and they're like, oh, good, we like this idea, we want to invest. What is the ROI? What is the return on equity? What is your discounted cash flow? And you're like, you know what? Can I call my accountant? You can be rest assured that those guys are going to walk away, right? Because they're talking to a business owner or entrepreneur who does not understand the basic thing about his business based on finance. Finance is the language of business. If you don't understand how to speak that language, you're going to find yourself at a disadvantage. So it's really important for you to understand how it works. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the major items in a financial statement. There are actually 3 of them. You have the cash flow. We talked about cash flow initially. And I said that the cash flow is the lifeblood of the business. Why is it the lifeblood? Because cash is what you use to run the business. Without adequate cash running through the business, without a knowledge of what is coming in terms of cash and what is going out in terms of cash, you will not know what you need. So say you had 10 million naira coming into your account, into the business, right? And you think that the business is doing well, but you don't know that you have invested and you've paid out some stuff and 12 million in cash has gone out. You don't know that in actuality, your business has a deficit of 2 million naira. You're only looking at the 7 million that is coming. And then maybe your workers come and they're like, boss, good work, can we have a salary? And you look at your account and it is in deficit. And you're like, guys, could you? No, they couldn't, because they have to feed their families. So you need to understand how cash flow works. It is the total amount of cash that is transferred in and out of the business, and how this inward and outward flow of cash affects the ability of the business to meet its obligations. That ability is called liquidity. Are you liquid enough to meet your obligations? It's the same thing with human beings, right? So if you have obligations that you have to meet as a person, whether it's to meet school fees, whether it's to meet your rent or whatever, and you're earning 10 million naira in a month, but you're paying out 12 million naira, at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself in a deficit position because you have not paid attention to your cash flow. Now, 82% of startup failure is actually due to cash flow problems. So you need to understand how it works, right? Now, what is the next metric or item in the financial statement? Is something called the profit or loss statement, which is the bottom line. So essentially, we talk about ourselves as business leaders. What is the ultimate measurement of leadership? It is actually results. When you say you're a leader, whether it's a leader of people, leader of resources, or whatever it is, people are going to look at the results of the things that you say you lead. So if you say that you're leading a business, we're not going to measure you by what you said. We're going to measure you based on the results of the business. And how do we look at the results? It's by looking at your P or L, profit or loss. Have you made a profit based on all the resources that you have on ground, or have you made a loss? That number tells us how well you have operated. That is the measurement of your leadership, right? So what is profit or loss? It is essentially the difference between your revenue, all the revenue that you've earned as a business in a particular period, and your expenses, all the things that you've paid out, right? Now, this sounds a bit similar to cash flow, right? But remember that cash flow deals with only cash. When we talk about revenue, you can have revenue that you earn that is cash, and then you can have revenue that is credit. Because, for instance, you can sell a product or a service, and the person says he will pay you in 2 weeks' time. So if you're recording that sale in your books, you can record it as phone sold 20K. Is the cash with you? No, because you have sold it on credit. So when we say revenue, we're talking about all the sales that you made, all the income that you made, whether it's cash or whether it's credit. Your expenses are everything that has gone out of the business, whether it's depreciation, whether it's salaries, all your obligations. When you match those two together, the difference between total revenue and total expenses leads to your bottom line, which is either a profit or a loss. So this is where some people tend to miss it, because they look at it on the surface. So for example, I was having this conversation with this guy who's into food produce, and I say, yeah, I like your business model. So how much profit did you make um, last period? So he says, okay, I bought 10 tubers of yam, right, at 10,000 naira, and I sold it at 15,000 naira. So my profit is 5,000 naira. And I said, you are totally wrong. And I was like, what? Why? I bought it at this and I sold it at this. It's a profit of 5,000 naira. And I said, no, sir. Because in that same business, you have advertised. In that same business, you have paid salaries. In that same business, you have paid your rent. All of those costs are costs that the business has to bear. So what you've done actually is just look at your gross profit. You've looked at the difference between your cost price and your sales price, but you have not taken into account your other costs. This is what the bottom line does for you. So you take into account all your revenue and all your expenses, whether it's cash or credit, and you match it. So it's really an exercise of efforts and accomplishments. The efforts that you've put into the business, whether it's salaries, whether it's transportation or whatever it is, all those efforts, what have they translated to in terms of accomplishment? The combination of that is your profitability, all right? And then you have the balance sheet, right, which is what I call the scales. What does the balance sheet do, essentially? So it gives you, or it lets you know three things, right? What you own as a business, what you own, what you owe, and the status of the investments that you have put in as the entrepreneur or the business owner. What you own, what you owe, and the status of the investments that you put in as the business owner. What you owe is what we call an asset. What you own, rather, is what you call an asset. An asset is anything that through its sale or its use puts money in your pocket. So if this phone, with this phone, I was running a business with this phone, I'm selling the phone, right? This phone and all the phones there are assets for me because I'm using it to generate income. So if I'm taking an inventory of my stock, right, these are listed as my assets, okay? What do I owe? What do I owe are the things that are obligations for me, whether it's salaries, whether it's creditors, whether it's debt. I've borrowed money from somebody and I have to pay it back. These are all obligations. So I'm owing people these things. I'm owing my staff, I'm owing my creditors, I'm owing my investors, and I have to pay them back. Those are the things that I owe. Those are what we call liabilities, okay? What is the last thing? The status of investments made. When I started the business, I probably put around 100,000 naira or $100,000 into the business. Now, if I ran that business profitably, and at the end of the day, it's giving me a profit of $50,000, the status of that investment has yielded me a return on my initial investment. So instead of 100,000, I now have 150,000. That is a measurement of equity. Your equity is the sweat or the money from the sweat that you've put into your business. And you've worked that business and you've worked it and you've worked it. And at the end of the day, it has yielded you a profit. When you combine that profit and you take it back to your initial investments, right, you have made a return on your equity or your equity investment. Right? So what's the difference between all these things we've talked about? The cash flow shows you cash balances, what is coming in, what is going out in terms of cash. The income statement shows you how profitable you're running the business or not, while the balance sheet shows you the status of your assets, your liabilities, and your equity. Now, those three things give you a picture at a particular point in time. That is why I said you can look at a financial statement and at a glance, you can see how well your business is doing or not. Because it's giving you that snapshot at a particular point in time, it shows you the picture and you're able to take a decision, right? At that point in time, that's what a balance sheet does. If you're looking at the balance sheet for the latest period, it's going to give you the balance sheet as at the end of yesterday, for instance. So the three statements combined gives you a holistic view of how well your business is doing, all right? Now, of course, it doesn't stop there because it's just like high level, okay? It actually goes much deeper into that, but I'll give you a few clues as we run off the session. Now, going on to business plans. Business plans are also very essential things that entrepreneurs must know, right? Because whether you're investing, whether you're getting people to join you, right, to invest, you need to show them a roadmap of where you're going to. That is embedded in your business plan, okay? So creating a business plan is one of your most important and strategic tools because it helps you to achieve your objectives, whether they're near, whether they're mid, or they're long term. So an effective one will actually give you greater clarity, right, on all aspects of the business. So if you want to look at a checklist, there are some certain elements that a good business plan, an effective business plan should have. What are those things? Very quickly, an executive summary. If you needed to give a very concise view of your business, right, to someone who asks what you do, what would you say within 5 minutes that would make that person interested? So for instance, we talk about things like elevator pitches, right? If you enter the business and you found yourself in the same elevator with Dangote, for instance, you know, right, that this guy is someone who's capable of giving you investments that could transform the business. So you want to talk to him about it. A typical elevator ride lasts somewhere between 3 minutes and 5 minutes. What would you say in that period to Dangote that would make him go, you're making sense. Call me or talk to me or come to my office. That is your executive summary. Short, sweet, concise, all right? Your company profile, what are the strengths of the business? What makes it a beautiful bride? For the gentleman in the house, you know, when you married your wife, there was something about her that caught your eye. So what is that thing about your business that will catch the eye? What is that unique thing? The unique thing, what we call the USP, the unique selling proposition, right? Now that unique thing, as we talked about earlier, which is where we announced about the gifts and all that, it should focus on the customer, the problem you're solving for the customer, rather than on the business, because that is what the customer is attracted to, right? The customer is attracted in what problems you're solving, not for your own benefit. So if your USP clearly shows what you're bringing to the table, then you've done an effective job. So these things should be contained in your company profile. Then we have your target market. You know, what are you doing in terms of products or services? Who are the people that you want to serve? Because you can't serve everybody. An apple tree will not go for people who are only interested in mangoes, right? So who are the people that need the things that you have to proffer? Those people constitute your target market. What are the problems you're solving for them? Who are the customers? Who are the organizations? Who are the people you plan to serve? That is your target market. What is the product life cycle? You know, if you're producing a product, say this phone, from beginning to end, the process of producing the phone, what does it look like? You have to run us through it, end to end. What is the life cycle from beginning, manufacturing, distribution, whatever it is, to the end? How does it look like? That's the product life cycle, okay? The marketing strategy, very important. So you know that customers are the people that make things happen, whether you have decided that you're an entrepreneur, in which case they're your lifeblood, or you're a business owner, in which case they're your business's lifeblood. In either case, your customer is very important. You cannot have a business without a customer. But the thing is, how do you plan to get those customers through the door? How do you walk them through the door? You just put up a signboard and say, hey guys, I'm in business, let's do it. No. You need something that's going to attract them, right? So what is the strategy for achieving that? How do you plan to attract them? How do you plan to retain them when they come in? Because it's not just enough for you to attract them. They need to be retained for your business to grow, right? So how do you plan on getting them through the door? You need to have a thorough understanding of that. You need to know how to attract them and how to retain them, okay? Of course, you need a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths of the business? What are the opportunities that you see there? What are the weaknesses? You know, are there businesses that might eat you for lunch? What are the threats? What are the things that might happen? Are we going to have another COVID? Is it going to affect your life cycle, your product, your service? How do you think you can do what you're doing better than your competitors? That goes into your SWOT analysis. And then your business and organizational structure are two different things. Your business structure is the structure of the business as it is. Is it a sole proprietorship? Is it a partnership? Is it a limited liability company? What kind of structure is it? What kind of structure are you running? You need to be very clear in your mind about that. Your organizational structure is the structure of the business as it relates to the people who are there. So you have your CEO, which is most likely you. You have someone in charge of operations. You have someone in charge of marketing. You have someone in charge of technology or whatever. So how those people fit into the hierarchy? That is the organizational structure. And then, of course, your funding request. If you're seeking funding, right, which is usually the main need for a business plan, the investor needs to know how much you are requesting for and what you want to use those funds for. Another thing is that funds can come in typically two ways, either through debt or through equity. What is debt? Debt is when you go to a bank or a loan financing company and you ask for 10 million naira. And they say, okay, we're going to give you 10 million naira and you're going to be paying us back 100,000 naira every month for the next 12 months or whatever it is. At a particular rate, that is debt. On your books, it's going to sit as debt because you're going to be paying back the interest every month, right? It's a debt to you. An equity investment is someone who gives you money in exchange for ownership. So if you came to me and you describe your business and I'm like, okay, fine, I think it's going to work. Now, I'm going to give you 20 million naira, but in exchange for that 20 million naira, I want 30% ownership of your company. That is an equity investment. So you need to know what kind of funding you require. Do you require debt or do you require equity? All right. And then, of course, very important, your financial projection. You're not going to make assumptions and say, I'm going to make 500 million naira profits in 2 years. What are the things that are going to drive it? You know, from your business as it is, right? How is your business going to transform in terms of numbers over the next 3 years or over the next 5 years? If we give you this money, let us see how it's going to play out. So we want to see your sales projections, your income projections, your budgets for expenses. How are those things going to work? And how is it going to relate to the profits we're expecting to have as an investor? Because it is the investor that is looking at this business plan and taking a call. If it doesn't see that you've done the homework, then it's not going to give you any money. All right. Now, basically that's about a wrap about it. So I just wanted to, I said I was going to talk about Hajem Consult, right, which is my business. So a few things that we do there, right? First of all, I said I released a book last year. So it's called Entrepreneur First Class. Essentially, it aims to provide that gap in terms of knowledge. We talked about knowledge and the knowledge of principles of business, right? So obviously, before you go into uncharted waters, you need a guide. You need something that describes what's going to happen and how you need to navigate, okay? And this is written in very plain, straightforward language. It's not written, because I don't like to teach using academic terms, this is this and that is that. No, you need to be able to describe it. You need to be able to relate, make it relatable. Okay, so the book is written in such language, you can relate to it. It's illuminating, it's funny, it's practical, it's down to earth. It reflects my personality because I discovered that I like to have fun when I'm learning or when I'm teaching. So that is the style that the book is written in. So if you're interested in getting the book, you can get it at my website, williamora.com. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble, it's on Goodreads. Now, what are the things that people have been saying? So quite a number of people have said it's very good. It's a very good book to have. Someone said it's unarguably the most important business book he's read. Another person said that it provides you with vital information. So it is actually making an impact, right? And people are using it and discovering that the more they use it and the more they're able to gain knowledge of the principles of business, they're able to find their way much more quickly. All right. What else do? We actually do masterclasses. So this class, which is a freebie session, is actually is more or less like an overview of what we really do, right? So I said that there are 5 focus areas that I'm interested in and that I have expertise in. We're talking about leadership, finance, entrepreneurship, communication, and management. Each of these things are pillars that you can not only use as an entrepreneur, but even as someone going through life, all of us were created to be leaders, but not all of us are displaying that gift of leadership because we don't understand how leadership works. We don't understand how to manage finance effectively, whether it's as a person or as a business owner. We don't understand the necessary skills that an entrepreneur should have, right? We don't know how to communicate because as a leader, you must talk. You must communicate your vision effectively. If you don't know how to do that, even if your idea is very good, people are not going to relate with you. You get. And then you must know how to manage resources. So these 5 pillars are very essential, and that is why we take time to really drill down into all aspects of these things and make sure that anybody going through these master classes come out baked and they know what they're doing, right? So you can book any of these sessions, right? And whether it's for yourself, for your team, and I can assure you that it's going to be a life-changing, transformative event. And then, of course, for business plans, because even though I've described the checklist, it's not something that necessarily anybody can do on their own. For example, things like financial projections, you actually need someone who's experienced in that to give you a proper guide of how to project finances, right? You need to know how to connect the dots in terms of your market strategy, in terms of your SWOT analysis, etc. So Hudson Consult also prefers curated business plans. No matter what your business is, we sit with you, we analyze what your business does, and then we prefer the business plan that matches your need, whether it's for investment purposes or whatever it is, all right? And then, of course, we do consulting, especially in the area of performance management, because you start a business and then you're not necessarily getting the right results or the results that you think you need to have. So you need someone who's experienced in performance management. Performance management is, to put it broadly, the ability to manage performance. So your people, you're not getting enough from them, or you're not getting the right results from them. What are the things that you need to do to get those results in? That is performance management. And then how do you measure that? So we also do that. Okay. So we've come to the end of this masterclass. If you want to reach out, these are my details. You can find me on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, Facebook. My mobile number is there. And then you can reach me at hattonconsults@gmail.com if you want to send a mail. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for listening. God bless you. I hope you got the value from this. And we're done. So questions, feedback. Take it away, guys.
Wow. All right, so awesome time. Thank you very much, William, for so much information, so much knowledge, so much guidelines, that discussed today. And I'm really glad to be a part of this class. I hope everybody has gained as much as I have. I'm certainly flying with a lot of things I've heard today. So thank you very much, William. Thank you.
Thank you, bro. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Joel, and this has been a very revealing session. And I just like the way you detail out all these things, because it's always good for one. If you want to get involved in something, it's good to know how the road ahead is going to be, and also to know exactly how you fit into all that role and responsibility. So again, this is real good stuff. I mean, this is the stuff you get from business strategy sessions and seminar and stuff. For those that don't have no idea what it costs to really put up something like this, I really want to thank you and appreciate you. Another perspective that I think that you bring in is the fact that knowing that you're a person of faith. I like the way how you tie that into this, because I believe that a lot of people they get into stuff. There's always this thing about how you get something spiritually, but to now put them now precept or some Bible talks about how you can build something precept or some precept, right? Those building blocks, it really gets confusing. But I think this adds some clarity into that and helps you know that it's doable. Just like we know in the Bible when Pharaoh met with Joseph and asked Joseph to implement. it wasn't just a case of interpreting the dream, but the implementation of that dream again shows how detailed, how how thorough he was, and in what he believes and what he does. Really, that really speaks to you. I like the fact that you're bringing your expertise in the financial industry and helping us break it down, so that way we can relate and also see them as everyday tool for success. I believe that that's unique, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gilbert. Mr. Taiwo Adepoju, the startup specialist. Go ahead.
Sir, this one, I have to just make you the entrepreneurial specialist, because this was loaded. I can't even understand how, the whole of Nigeria is not on board right now, to think that this level of information as to the depth, the quality.
Please help me ask them what they were doing.
so I'm just looking at it and like, okay, no wonder. So, sir, please, can you drop the link to the book so that we can expressly also start to order now, and then let's share with our friends, any of the people that missed. So I'd like to say thank you so much. May God continue to engrace you with wisdom. All right, and this assignment will go beyond the bounds in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. All right. So thank you for the comments, Boss T. So once again, if you want to get the book, williamanwana.com, Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, or you could reach out to me via my contact, and we'll get you the electronic copy, right? So my contacts, once again, are right here: IG, Twitter, mail, mobile, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm all there just for you. Thank you again. Do we have any other comments, questions? Anybody need clarity?
Boss? Hello?
Hello, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, boss.
Go ahead, sir.
It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. This son of man, okay?
Son of
Hello?
man, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I actually came late, but now I have to learn so much from here. I'd like you to know that we're going places together. I will share some things with you. Okay, sir?
No problem. No problem. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All righty. That's my buddy, friend of son of man. Nice name, huh?
Question from me.
Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Quick question.
Hello, Mrs. Anwana.
How did you know? Okay.
There's only one person that has that voice in the world, So.
Okay. Like I always say, you've got a great teaching ability, and that is one thing nobody can take away from you. And the way you break it down is also an art. So we appreciate the wealth of knowledge you bring to the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I know that as people get more insights on this, they'll be able to take on several problem-solving approaches that will, scale and also help our economy. We're at a place in Nigeria where we don't, we want to remember that musician who sang and then said, "Which way Nigeria?" Concerning the economic policies, that we're seeing, the economic policies that are a bit backwards and all of that, and seeing issues around agri sector and issues around several financial sector even. So we see that at this point in time, the average entrepreneur is actually the person we'll have to look up to at this point in time, because we can't even depend on any other structure at this point.
Thank you. We'll have a date tomorrow.
Yeah, William, hi. This is Elua.
Hey, bro, what's up, bro?
I'm good. 2 questions from me. Thanks again for the presentation and all.
All right.
So question 1 for me is, when you, most of your analogy was focused on products and product businesses. Maybe that's question 2. So question 1, if you're trying to bring a product into the market, right? One thing I noticed was the marketing cost is a killer, and which I think you allude to lack of finance to do that bit of marketing. But whatever way you try to do your marketing, what's what's your advice of when do you decide to pull out if you see that you're not making your expected profit after, you've given 6-month run on the product and you invested, your money, and you're constantly running at a loss? At what point do you say, okay, I can't take this anymore? Do I get more funds to sustain the marketing? So that's question one. At what point, what's the judgment call to get out? Question two, like I said, most of your examples were based on product marketing. Or in the field of consulting, where you're not holding something tangible, you're providing, for lack of a better word, cerebral services. And most times organizations put a peg on either who and who can be listed on the staffing. For example, they say, we understand management costs should take care of senior management like the CEO and some maybe directors. They don't want to see that listed as staff. And they also peg your management fee. Usually, depending on who you are, it ranges from 5% to 25%. So how do you help in making a decision to say, if you're not going to allow me charge everything I want, and you're curbing the percent management fee, is this a viable business, or do I just struggle to make it viable?
Thank you. Thank you a lot. That very, very interesting question. So question one was talking about, how long do you continue to run based on what you see on ground? At what points do you pull out? Now, there's a very interesting concept called a break-even analysis, right? Which is actually one of the things that you need to do when you're having your financial projections. What does a break-even analysis do? It tells you at what point, even before you start, at what point are you likely to break even? So take, for example, let me look for a typical example. Okay, let's look at restaurants, for instance, even though they're not necessarily popular right now because of COVID. But you start up a restaurant, you have this product, let's call it Elua burgers or whatever it is. Okay, so you have the cost of your ingredients, right? It costs you X to produce this burger, right? Now you know that you have fixed costs because you have your rent, you have your salaries, you have your light bulbs or whatever that you have to pay. Those costs are not going anywhere. They are fixed. Whether you sell one burger or you sell 20 burgers, those costs remain the same. You have variable costs, the cost of producing the burger. Whether if it's one burger, it's going to be X. If it's 5 burgers, it's going to be X plus 5 or whatever it is. So having those two things in mind, what do you need to work out? You need to work out how many of these burgers do I need to sell by X period in order for me to either make sure that I meet my total costs or that I make a profit. So for instance, knowing that your total fixed costs come to maybe 2 million naira, right? Your variable costs come to 1 million naira. Know that your total costs are what? 3 million naira. How many units of burgers do I need to sell in a month, which is where I'm going to have my total cost, in order for me to meet 3 million naira income? Okay, because you know that if you meet 3 million naira in income from sales, it will take care of your fixed cost and your variable cost, and to allow you to break even. So when you have that figure, the next question is to ask, look, okay, I need to sell 10,000 burgers in a month for me to break even. Is that 10,000 burgers a realistic figure? Can I realistically sell 10,000 burgers a month? Okay. When you have the answer to that, you'll know that, okay, look, it's either I need to get in more staff, or I need more funding that will allow me to maybe make sure that some of these processes are automated and will reduce my fixed costs or whatever it is. But that gives you an idea of the strategy that you then need to deploy. Now, if you've considered all these things and you've come to the realization that, look, man, this thing's not going to work because my total costs come to X. There is no way on God's green earth I'm going to sell this amount of burgers that would allow me to break even or even make a profit. I might as well look for some other thing to do, or collaborate, or whatever it is. But what that has done, what that exercise has done, has given you options, right? So that you're not just blowing in the wind. You're not just walking in faith, as some people would say. Some people tend to say, okay, yes, God has given me the dream and then it's going to happen. But the numbers are telling you something that you need to act on. So I think having that exercise done at the outstart would enable you to a good extent take care of some of these things so that you're able to strategically apply yourself to solving that problem. Does that answer your question, that first question?
Yeah.
Good. Now, for the second question, which is also very interesting, we talked about consulting. How do you essentially peg your prices? So, yes, I alluded to, or rather, most of my analogies were alluding to products, but I'm also a service-based business, because like I said, I actually do consulting. I provide services in terms of business plans, the book, etc. So I'm actually providing a service, right? So I will give you an example of how I would normally price, or what my thinking is when I'm pricing. So I already know back end how much it costs me in terms of manpower, in terms of if you want to put a time to the cost of using your brain, in terms of what I need to do in order for my business, which is a service-based business, to declare a profit or to make or to break even. What do I do? Let's say my total expenses, whether it's my rent, because I'm renting renting an apartment or whatever it is, to produce the service, and I'm hiring my services out to people, it comes to X amount. What do I do? As I'm pricing the service, I'm going to build that in and add a markup, most likely. That will take care of the expenses that I have and allow me to make a profit. Another thing that I think is essential is that you really need to know your value, okay? Because some organizations might say, look, bro, we like your idea, we like the services you want to bring to the table, but we can only afford to pay you this. Because some people will say it's honorarium, we're trying to help your business, but they don't know that you have so many bills to pay back end. Now, if you only give me 5,000 Naira, when I have 20,000 Naira worth of bills to pay, and I know that what I'm serving you with, or the value I'm bringing to you is worth 30,000 Naira, bros, please keep your 5,000 Naira. Obviously, you and I are not on the same page, right? So it is those people. You remember I made that analogy about the apple tree and the mango tree. Not everybody likes apples. Not everybody likes mangoes. But the people who like those things are the people that will get those things because those are the things that they need. So if you're underpricing me, and I know that my value is much more than what you're paying, please move on, Jack. Right? There are other people who are out there who will know what my value is worth, and that is my price. That is the value. I'm matching my value with the cost that I'm asking you to serve with. You understand? So again, I hope that also addresses that.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thanks again for those questions, bro. Anybody else? Comments, questions, feedback? No? Are you shy? Are you frightened? Okay. It appears that we are about done. So once again, I would thank you all so much for taking time to join me. I know it's a Saturday. I know that probably you have some other things to do, but the fact that you chose to spend this time with me, it's very important to me, and I really appreciate you. Once again, these are my details on the screen. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in any of the master classes. Once again, these are the 5 pillars: leadership, finance, entrepreneurship, communication, management. If you're also interested in the book, you can get at these spaces, you can reach out to me, etc. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.